Hi Flosstube, I'm Michelle from Michelle's Romantic Tangle, and it is Wednesday, April 4th, I think. The thing I'm real clear about with the date is it's not May yet, because I think I want to try Mania this year, and I am counting down the days and totally hoping that nothing new happens to throw life into chaos. It looks like I'll be able to have time to do a lot of stitching in May, and I hope things stay that way. I did wind up taking a break. We lost Grandpa a week and a half ago, I think, something. There's been a funeral, there's been moving furniture, and I don't want to talk about that. What I do want to talk about is our stitching and how the things we are making get kind of tangled up with the memories of our lives and what we were making at that time. So I started Beacon at Daybreak. It's a Dimensions Gold Petites. Doing it because I love it. It's also a happy, it'll fit the Dimensions Sal that Amy and I are doing. And when we left for our trip to the coast, Grandpa was, we weren't sure what was going to happen, but we knew that he wasn't going to be with us much longer. I threw a couple of kits in my bag, and I threw this one because, hey, Lighthouse Coast. I had it in the back of my head that sometimes projects get tainted by things that happen while you're working on them. And the Lighthouse was expendable. I was okay if it got tainted. Which, I apologize if that sounds weird and horrible and cold, but that was my thought process at the time. And looking back, I've got some very ambitious, complex quilts that I could not have told you why I never quilted them. And I realized when I was thinking about all of this that those are the quilts that I was working on right before we lost Grandma. And I think that may be why they went into a box and have not come out in the 4 years since then. So back to the Lighthouse. I am loving this Lighthouse. I started in the upper right hand corner, and I was kind of going to finish a quarter at a time, but somehow I have wound up going over to the left hand edge, and I think I'm just going to kind of work up and down from there, and that makes more sense than it sounds like, because this is easy, half stitchy sky, and over in here is more complicated with the rocks, so it gives me a choice of whether I want to work on something easy or hard. Like I said, I was considering whether my Lighthouse would be tainted by the circumstances. And it was expendable. I was willing to not keep stitching this if I did get emotional baggage tied to it. Then I started stitching it, and I fell in love with it, and I am really... There have been days I stabbed myself in the eyelid with my embroidery needle the other day. I have not been stitching well. I have not been doing a good job of getting the needle tip through the right hole. Despite the struggles, I still love this. And this piece, I started it because it was a lighthouse and because we were going to the coast. After we got back to the coast, from the coast, and things happened and life unfolded, I got thinking about it, and my grandparents, for maybe 10 years, I'm not sure how long, at one point they built a house on the coast. They've always loved the coast. When I was a little kid, okay, I got to tell you the lighthouse story. The story of the lighthouse that is not haunted. So let me digress here. I remember in probably early elementary school being at a friend's house after school, and we were watching one of those PBS daytime after school kids shows. And if you know what show this was, please tell me, because I cannot find it. They had a story about a haunted lighthouse, and a ship's captain had left his daughter to be taken care of by some people, and her and the local kids went exploring an old abandoned lighthouse. She went back in for her scarf, and from outside they heard a scream, and all they found in the room where she had been was her scarf in a pool of blood. And of course the lighthouse was haunted. Love ghost stories. Loved ghost stories as a little kid. Haunted lighthouse stories, absolutely 100%. So a couple years later, my grandpa was volunteering at the, I confuse my Yaquina lighthouses. There's the Bay Lighthouse and the Head Lighthouse. The Yaquina Bay Lighthouse. In the lighthouse there is a plaque. And the plaque tells the story of the girl with the scarf, and how the girl with the scarf was a fictional short story written for a local newspaper. So it's a ghost story that wasn't a ghost story. And while we were there, I took a picture of the lighthouse as it would have been when that story was written. I think I have pictures of the lighthouse now. That lighthouse is not this lighthouse, but it's giving me happy, warm, and fuzzy feelings to think of that lighthouse and trips to the coast and my grandparents while I stitch on it. So unintentionally, this is working way better than I ever thought it would be. And it may be because I am putting all of my bad thoughts into the new shawl. This needs to be on longer needles, and I would switch it, except I've only got maybe 10 rows left, and I think I can squeeze that on these needles. And I like the colors, I like the texture, I like the pattern's texture, not the yarn's texture. This yarn is really loosely spun. It is tricky to knit with, because if you don't catch the entire strand of the yarn, you get weird little variations in the texture. So I've been struggling with this yarn. I can knit it. It takes more concentrating on the actual physical yarn than I want to do right now. Got to the second skein of yarn, it had 3 knots. The third skein of yarn, I found the first knot. I'm expecting more, and I have this much more yarn to knit up, and then I can bind it off, and then I can donate it, and I will be done with it. I've got $3 invested in the yarn for this shawl. It's Hobby Lobby clearance yarn. I could totally just let it go and throw it away, but I don't do that. I can't throw, yarn has to be so bad before I can throw it away. And I talked about socks a couple of videos ago. I have gotten this far in a month. It's pretty yarn. It's one of my favorite yarns. It's Knit Picks Hawthorne Montavia, and once I get up to still working on the foot, I'll turn the heel, get to the cuff, and add some lace, and that will be fun. And last week, while I was feeling exceptionally cranky, I stitched this. The pattern is a freebie. I cannot remember the name of the website right now, but I will link it in the description below. There are supposed to be some flowers down here arcing along the bottom, but I wanted it to fit in the hoop that I had sitting next to me while I was stitching it. So this is what I did. It's going on the wall in my sewing room, and it's a little bit tangled up in what was going on while I stitched it. I have the past week, stupid things have happened that have amped up my stress level, and they're not, in the scheme of things, they are not big things, but I do not need any added stress on top of everything else, so I'm strung about as tightly as I could be strung right now, and the grocery store triple charging me for my groceries, even though the money just went out and immediately back into the account. The fact that I had to call the bank and figure it out and make sure it did go back into the account, I did not need that this week. The guy who ran the stoplight in front of me and the boys is so lucky that I was watching and was able to stomp the brakes hard enough, because I think if we had hit him and he had caused an accident, on the way home from my moving my grandpa's furniture, he would not have wanted to have dealt with the crazy woman who he had provoked. My husband took me to see Pet Sematary, and I had been warned not to go see Pet Sematary, that it was a good movie, but I should wait a while. And I didn't listen because I have been waiting for this movie to come out. Pet Sematary is probably my favorite Stephen King book. I read it when it came out, which puts me in middle school. I read Cujo when I was 11. I had a lot of nightmares as a kid. So my husband and I saw the movie when we were dating, when it came out in 1989, and we saw so many movies. There's a stretch of late 80s, early 90s that we saw just about everything in the theater. Pet Sematary, the experience of going to that movie stuck with me. And I remember, it scared me. And I remember walking out to the Lancaster Mall parking lot after seeing that movie. And just, that movie has stuck with me. And I've seen it a lot of times since then. It doesn't scare me as much now as it did then, but I still like the original movie. I was very hesitant that they were remaking it, especially when I saw the first trailer. It's like, what are you doing and why are you doing that? Then I saw the trailer with the spoilers and read an interview with the explanation of why they made the changes they did, and I was even less enthusiastic about the changes. I'm not spoiling any. Actually, I don't think I'm going to spoil anything here. I'm trying not to. But on Lithgow's Judd, I wanted to see that. So we went and we saw it. And the movie has a lot of jump scares. It has a lot of music welling up for the jump scare. Through the entire movie, my husband is sitting beside me, and every time there's a jump scare coming, he would grab me. And I knew he was going to do it. It was this guessing game of, okay, when is he going to do it? I love my husband. If there was anything that was going to make me feel a little bit better about life at the moment, that was it. It's a good movie. Kind of comparing apples and oranges. It's a good movie. I'll watch it again. And there is the scene in the first version of the movie with Judd's ankle. My boys hassle me about that scene because I can't look at the screen. It's not great special effects, but I can't look at the screen. You know, when all the reviews of the new movie are saying that it included that scene, and that scene always refers to the ankle, I'm not the only one apparently who has an issue with that scene. So, Lighthouse, Pet Sematary. I don't know if swearing helped, but stabbing fabric helped. The shawl, the socks. I am going to try Mania this year. What I would like to do is start a bunch of brand new projects. I don't know if reality is going to let me do that. So the plan is to start a bunch of new projects. I want to try for 31 or as close to a project a day as I can. They're not all going to be stitching because I stitch bigger projects that I don't think 31 brand new whips would be a good idea. And I don't want to do all ornaments, so I think I'm going to start some moderate sized projects and cast on some new knitting projects and maybe sew some project bags because those are quickie little one-day projects. Part of me thinks that I should just start my own personal Mania today or this week while I have some time and I know that things are going smoothly. And I could do that because if everybody is setting their own rules for Mania, there's no reason mine can't run from the 24th to the 24th, but I don't want to miss out on playing at the same time everybody else is playing. So I'm deciding. I mean, I could go from April 24th to May 31st. Are there 30 days in May? I don't know. I'll figure it out. It's not. With everything else going on in the world, what day I start Mania is probably the least critical thing I have to deal with. No thrifting, no new haul. My daughter has to get her car taken in to have some recalls fixed later this week, so because she has to leave her car for 5 hours, I'm gonna go up with her and we're gonna play around in my car, and I'm hoping maybe that means a trip to Portland to dig through the bins, which I'm hoping maybe means I can film the experience for you guys, because if you haven't been to the outlet bins, they're fun, and so many of the stories that I hear about the outlet bins, including the ones we go to, they're exaggerated. It's not that bad. Not on the days I've been there, and I've been there on a lot of days. I am Michelle from Michelle's Romantic Tangle. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will be back with another video soon and getting back to my regular schedule, but things are still a little bit up in the air right now. I will see you as soon as I can.